It's exciting to be here in Omaha. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having my family out, my wife, my two boys sitting there. I think they're waiting for some pizza, but they got a couple of cookies first, so I think we had a little bit of fun earlier today, and I see some of the folks that were helping out. Just like, and I gotta say, you know, coming from Washington D.C., you know, our Antifa over there, they're feral. Right, they're feral, they're nasty, they don't shower, you know. And then I went out to the, you know, Chaz in 2020, and out in Chaz, I mean, those guys are out in force. They've got long guns out there, AR-15s. One guy had AK-47, you know, 9mm in the waistband, kind of stuff, manning the checkpoints. And then we get the guys of Antifa Omaha today. Ladies and gentlemen, they're not sending the best. Yeah, you look at the one guy, it looks like the one guy was eating all of the other guy's food. You know what I mean? Like that, and you see these guys, and it's like, man, you live in Omaha. And this actually is our first time in Omaha, first time in Nebraska. We have a great town. And I'm looking at these guys, and I'm thinking, you look like you don't get any sun. You look like you don't spend any time, you know, doing anything physical outside of, you know, your mother's basement or whatever it is, you know. And thank you to her for, you know, letting you use her bike, you know, to be able to bike your way down today. And it's like, you have such a nice town here in Omaha. Go down. We took the kids down to Old Market, and we were just walking up and down the street, looking at the candy, you know, Hollywood candy. We took them to the Imaginarium. They loved it. They had a great time. I'm sitting here thinking, what makes you so mad that you live in Omaha, or you got such a great place? They're just, because you understand what we're dealing with, though, in this country is people that will look at a town like Omaha or a state like Nebraska, and they see normal people living normal lives, they see families, they see churches with people that are attending Mass, attending services, Palm Sunday, of course, tomorrow, Easter's next week, and so they have a problem with all of these things. It drives them nuts. It drives them crazy because they realize that for one reason or another, either number one, they don't want to actually have to do the work of being, you know, an upstanding and productive member of society, or number two, they go to these schools, they go to these colleges, and it started in the colleges, and now it's even going lower. Now it's going to the high schools, now it's going to the grade schools, and in some areas, as we know, they're even going into kindergartens, right? And they are being completely indoctrinated, and the crazy part is they're doing it on your dime. They're doing it with taxpayer dollars every time you see it. So every time, you know, I love when I go into, you know, whether it be any bookstore, right, any of these big chains, you know, Books A Million or Barnes & Noble or whatever, and I say, I want to get, you know, some books for my kids. Let's get some books for my kids. And you walk in, and you always see that table. And you all know what I mean by that table, don't you? I don't even need to say it. I don't even need to say it. You know what I mean? And it's kids' books, and every single author, their last name is either a Clinton or a Biden or Obama, a Harris, and you say, what's going on? And I look at that and I say, you know what though? They're running their game plan. This is their strategy. It's always been their strategy because they know they can't win at the ballot box. They know they can't win if they tell the truth about what their policies are. They know that there's a problem when all of a sudden, this was the, you know, what we learned from the COVID lockdowns. As insane as they were, I always say that there was one silver lining. If there was any silver lining to the COVID lockdowns, is that when Zoom classrooms got going on and parents were finally able to be looking over the shoulder at what those teachers were teaching them in those classrooms, we finally realized what was happening, and I really believe that it awakened a sleeping giant in this country, and that giant was the child today. And, you know, we're seeing this, by the way, across the Midwest, too, because, so I'm actually going to be speaking up in Kenosha in 2 weeks' time here. That will be my third time in Kenosha since the events of everything that happened with Kyle Rittenhouse and, you know, obviously him having to defend himself against a violent mob, and then spend a year and a half of his life trying to prove that in a courtroom when we all knew within the first 5 seconds of watching that video that that man acted in self-defense, obviously, right? And God forbid any of us or any of our kids ever got in that situation. But I say God had his hand on Kyle Rittenhouse because he got him out of that case, he got him out of that situation, and God was in that courtroom too, because he went to that jury and said, you cannot put this kid away for what he did. You know what happened there, and we have to tell the truth. But speaking of from a political perspective, the events of Kenosha, and it seems like the events of 2020, actually carried on. So up in Kenosha, they've never had a single Republican county executive until this very week. They just won for the first time in history, right in Kenosha, a Republican county executive, and the board went from, I'm gonna screw up the numbers, but it went from like 15, or was it? Yeah, I think it went from 12-6 to 6-12, D to R. So a huge swing. And what they said specifically was, and I was talking to some people, and I'm going to get some more intel when I go up on the ground next week, they said it was the suburbs. They said the suburbs are done. They are totally done. And a lot of it, it's from the violence all the way down to the CRT, and then next on this grooming stuff, this stuff that they're pushing in these schools, going in, and this idea that you could send your kid to one of these schools, and I'm not planning to send my kid to a public school, by the way, but other parents, you gotta remember, these are the people who, they believed it, right? They believed it for all these years. Well, the school's there, and I pay my property taxes, and we all know people like that, right? They're our neighbors, and there's nothing wrong with that, living that kind of life. But I always say that you're not red-pilled yet. You haven't got the red pill yet to understand what's really going on in this country. You haven't woken up. You haven't woken up to understanding how bad it's gotten in these institutions. And so when I talk about them not being able to have these ideas succeed at the ballot box, it's because that's why they went to the various institutions in this country. That's why they went to the schools, that's why they went to the universities, that's why they went to the courts, right? Every single meaningful, change in this country that we've had in the past 50 years, it all comes through the courts. They put this to the, we know, right? Because we're patriots, we've actually read our Constitution. Maybe some people even go to the next level and even read the Federalist Papers. If you're looking at what Turning Point USA is putting out, the way we're creating this type of content where we're packaging this stuff for the younger generation, making it interesting, actually having discussions about, hey, what do you think of Federalist 5? Well, what's Federalist 5? Here's a quick summary, and then you can debate it, right? We understand that this isn't the way our system is supposed to work. We're not supposed to have, I love Dr. Fauci as an example. I heard a gasp over there, actually. I got to rush the stage like an Antifa guy earlier today. So I wouldn't say he rushed as much as he wobbled, if anybody saw the video. But I love Dr. Posobiec as an example, because this is incredible. It's an unelected, right, unaccountable bureaucrat. But that bureaucrat who's never been elected to anything a day in his life, I don't know if he was like some, local township whatever at some point, or maybe a school board. Really don't want to be in that guy's school board. Yet he could make the decisions on masking and health policies for a local school district thousands and thousands of miles away from Washington, D.C. And actually, they would use his guidance, right? It's not orders anymore, it's guidance. Right, but what happens if you go against the guidance? They're playing those word games again, that's what they always do. That he would have the ability to countermand an order signed by the school board to take the masks off, that was backed up by the governor of the state to take the masks off, but they say, no, we can't because Dr. Fauci and the NIH say no. That's not the system that our founders designed. That's not the way the United States is supposed to work. It's supposed to work because our founders knew. They knew that human nature is a real thing. And you listen to progressives and you listen to these people, they go further and further left, and they think you can just, you can change people and you can convert them and remold them. But our founders understood this. They said, no, we read our Bible, we know that the founding fathers understood that human nature is immutable. It's always going to be the same. Politicians are going to be corrupt. And that's why if you actually read the Constitution, you understand that ultimate power doesn't rest with them. Ultimate power doesn't rest with Washington, D.C. They made sure that ultimate power in this country rests with the people. And I think it's time that people start waking up to that fact before it's too late. And I have to give a little bit of apologies on behalf of my stalwart war room co-host, Mr. Raheem Kassam, who wasn't able to be with us this weekend. He said he looked at a little bit too much of Hunter Biden's laptop just now, and he said, oh, he couldn't get it, afraid to get on an airplane. But to let you all know, we are still, even a year and a half later, digging through this laptop. We're going through the messages. I've got several copies of it at this point, and it is the hard drive from hell. And what's amazing to me is these people spent 18 months telling us that it wasn't real, it was Russian disinformation, that you guys are being paid by the Kremlin, and Vladimir Putin is, giving you a Venmo and a Cash App and all the rubles, which I don't know if they're worth more now, actually. With all this, it was always real, and they always knew it was real. I actually even point out the fact that, not to go too much down that line, but I point out, did you guys not even consider that the Russians might take it as a threat that you were lying about this laptop, because they knew that it was real too, because I guarantee you, the Russians and the Ukrainians know everything that Hunter Biden was doing over there. And you wonder why the Bidens care so much about Ukraine. I say, they got $83,000 a month to care about Ukraine. That family's got all the reason in the world to push this corruption further and further and further. But when you read this stuff, I mean, Hunter Biden got his hand out everywhere. He doesn't care about Ukraine. He doesn't care about China, he doesn't care about Russia, Kazakhstan, any of the places where he was making money. He cared about this and maybe a little of that. He cared about making money, and that's what it was. Hunter Biden was the bag man for the Biden crime family. When you look into these text messages and the emails, and I keep saying this, by the way, and I said it on the podcast on Human Events the other day, and I'm just waiting for the fact checkers to come at me on this. Oh, you can't just say that. You can't say, I've got an entire laptop, I've got an entire hard drive, I've got emails, I've got, and because, if you use the iOS, so it's actually synced with his iMessages. So I've got all of his iMessages too in there. And now I will say this, by the way, we haven't hooked it up to the internet. We've never done that. Because if you do that, that's crossing the line, because now you're downloading new stuff. And if you're downloading new stuff, that's hacking. So we're not doing that. But, so up until the point that he left it at that repair shop in Wilmington, Delaware, which I said this last night, so I apologize if you guys heard the joke already. But I remember when we first put this out, and they said, well, it's this hard drive, and Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani, and it was handed over because, remember, the guy didn't give it to us first at War Room. He didn't give it to War Room first. He gave it to the FBI. He notified the authorities. They've had it the entire time. They've had it the entire time. Yeah. Right, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't even know where it is. When you ask the guy, when Congressman Gates asked the guy in the hearing, he says, where's the laptop? I don't know. Right? It's your job. What are you doing? And so I look at this thing too, by the way, and they have this grand jury up in Delaware. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm reporting on it, but we'll see. They are interviewing people. They do have subpoenas out on this grand jury, so we'll see. As they say, the jury's out. But when it comes to it, there are videos on this thing where he is in, and he's just clearly drugged out of his mind in these videos, but as he's doing that, he goes to his laptop, usually shirtless, and starts talking to the camera and spilling his guts about everything that's going on, right? And he says, and because he's upset is what it is. And if you know any addicts, you have any addicts in your family, or in your networks, you understand addict mentality, and that it is a demon. It's an absolute demon that rests on people, that works on people, that feeds off of them, right? Addiction's a real sickness. It really is. People absolutely need help for this. And this guy is clearly just lost. And by the way, the family, they all knew. They all knew, and they kept putting him into these situations again and again. And it looks like, honestly, they were abusing that situation because they could exploit it and make money. And so they would tell him, hey, this bill needs to get paid. Hey, this guy needs one of those Visa prepaid debit cards or something. So the money all came out. They understood it was family money. It was family money that was going into the Bidens. And then he's whining and complaining in these videos, saying, nobody respects me. Nobody cares. I make all the money around here. And Dad goes off to these fancy dinners, won't even acknowledge me. I'm the one who does all the work. And he goes off and he's just so he just wishes I could be more like Bo. He just wanted me to be like Bo. Well, I'm not. And you hear these family issues, this deep-seated stuff. Very Irish, by the way. I don't know. Look, I'm just saying. If you're Irish, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying about, I'm Polish, but you know what I'm saying about Irish families, right? And so it's that typical and tragic. It's very tragic. I'm sad every time I look at this thing. I'm very sad. But at the same time, you hear him talking about, well, I can't believe it because the FBI is calling me, and apparently this guy, Patrick Ho, is the friggin' spy chief of China, and we're taking $15 million from him. He doesn't even know, right? He doesn't even know the people that they're putting him in these rooms with, that he's signing deals with. They just keep it, because they all know what it is, right? They all know that this is enabled to get leverage on the dad. And that's why when you see these videos out there, Joe Biden, and they never want you to acknowledge it or even tell you the truth about what it is. And he's bragging about, well, I got that prosecutor fired, and he was looking into this, and he was looking into that, and we didn't like him, so I held up the money, and we got him fired. And they want you to sit here as a reasonable American citizen, right? And you look at these facts, and you say, well, your son is making all this money, and you're getting these people fired, and this guy was looking into the owner of the company. That looks like something that might have a little something wrong with it. It's a little word we used to call corruption. And so it's amazing to me, not only when we have the duct tape issues in here, we'll get that in a second, but that the FBI's had this entire time, and they have confession videos on the laptop itself, and they never use it. And I love the media when they responded. They said, well, that's too far-fetched of a story. And I'm thinking, far-fetched? You think it's far-fetched that a crackhead forgot where he put his laptop? I mean, come on. So we've got this thing, we've authenticated it, we're going to continue pursuing stories from it. We're looking into areas, there may have been deleted archives, things like that on this thing, and we're going to continue to drill down. And that's, I probably should have said, are there any War Room fans in the audience? I remember it's been almost 2.5 years now, and Raheem Kazam, calls me up on like a Friday and says, Jack, we're doing a podcast. I'm like, a podcast? Nobody's going to listen to that. He said, no, we're doing it with Steve. Maybe somebody will listen. Said, all right, okay, well, what do you need? We need someone who knows about China. That's me. I'm like, okay, fine. So you need to be at Steve's house at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. He said, tomorrow Saturday. 8 o'clock, Jack. You need to be there. So I tell Tanya, and there she is. And I say, sweetheart, tomorrow morning I gotta go in, 8 o'clock, we're doing a podcast at Bannon's house. She's like, what are you doing, what? I said, yeah, they're calling it War Room Pandemic, and we're gonna start this thing, and they want me to talk about the CCP. And she said, does anybody care about that stuff? And I said, well, we have to make them care. We have to make them care. And here we are 2.5 years later, and thank you. And it's been amazing. And I mean, we were in Ogallala last night, which is God's country, by the way. And we were at the Haythorne Ranch, and I said, man, this is like the Yellowstone of Nebraska. This is awesome. And I said, I'm glad I'm taking but they flew me, which I was glad, because I don't want to be out on the Yellowstone of Nebraska, and they say, hey, we're taking you to the train station. That's good. That one over here just a little. But I mean, that was just absolute God's country. So beautiful, so absolutely beautiful. And then even out there, they're all coming up to me saying, hey, we listen to War Room every day. We want to know what's going on. We're switched on. We're activated. And so there's this new, campaign. The Turning Point is running this year. And they said, hey, Jack, we got a new campaign. I said, yeah, I know you guys got a lot of campaigns. But Charlie Kirk comes up and he says, Jack, you're gonna like this one. This is big. Okay, Charlie, hit me with it. He said, 2022, the year of the citizen. The year of the citizen. I love it. Because the idea is that it's citizen candidates now. And you're seeing this now with a rise. I haven't seen since really the Tea Party. This is really kind of more advanced, developed Tea Party, but now with the power of social media and the connectability of podcasts where people can meet and create a forum, and it is the Tea Party 10 times bigger is what we have now. And so the idea of citizen candidates, oh, and this precinct project, they hate this thing. Have you seen how much they hate anybody precinct project in here?
Love it. Yeah.
A couple of you? So the precinct project, you don't know, that's when you're going at the local level and you say, hey, you're identifying areas where the Republican Party doesn't have a precinct committee man or committee woman, there's 2 for each precinct, and that they're going in, or at the state committee level, all the way up, or identifying seats. Some people are even running for Secretary of State in some areas, other people running for higher offices, people have never run before, and they're sick of it. They're just sick of all this stuff where some guy gets up in front of you, I'm sure you've heard this speech a million times, right? I'm pro-life, I'm pro-God, I'm pro-Second Amendment, and I'm gonna cut your taxes, and if you send me off to Washington, I'm gonna do all this, and Ben Sass goes off and writes 5 books about how much he loves himself. He doesn't like me very much. Man, that's great, but what are you doing for the people of your state, right? You're supposed to be a representative, right? What are you doing back home? What's happening in your state? We've got issues like crime that are absolutely going on out of control. When you've got, by the way, fentanyl coming in from the border that's being facilitated by these drug cartels, right? They're in a cartel war right now, by the way, right on our southern border. All this stuff is flooding up into the United States. A lot of that border conflict, as I'm sure you all know, does spill over into the United States, the insane levels of violence. And my heart goes out to Ukraine, right? I'm Polish, my wife was born in the Soviet Union, right? That area is where our family's from. My heart goes out. But as an American, I look at it and say, that's 5,000 miles away. This stuff is happening in every single state of the country at this point because illegal immigrants are coming into every state. The cartels are now active in state after state. Fentanyl is hitting state after state. Guess what? That means every single one of our states is now a border state. Every single one of them. All of them. And that's why we need absolutely to look at this situation in a serious manner as a serious country. And I look at it this way, right? Do you think China would allow any of this going on their border? Can you imagine? No, absolutely not. Actually, so I'm a Navy intelligence veteran, served in the U.S. military, in the Navy as an officer, and we're focusing on South Korea. We looked at certain operations where there would be drug rings going on down in the Mekong Delta in Vietnam, and they were running stuff into China. China would just send a drone over and waste them all, every single one of them. They wouldn't play any of these games like we play. Oh, well, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. No, they find them, find the headquarters, boom, gone. And they said, well, what treaty did you sign under? Under the treaty of what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right? And that's basically how it went. And so when we look at these kind of situations, and I'm sure you all know what we're facing right now with Title 42, right? Yeah. So Title 42 was the public, and this is beautiful, right? Because you look at the two sides. So Title 42 was a health order signed by President Trump all the way back in those early days of the pandemic. When I remember we went on War Room, I believe it was January 25th, 2020 was the first episode, and we said, Mr. President, you need to shut down travel from China, and then you need to shut down these borders, and we need to do that. So the first thing he did was he shut down the planes from China, and then he shut down the borders with Title 42. This was the idea that there's no more wait, no, it's immediate turnaround. It's immediate turnaround as a public health order. And now, Biden's trying to take that off. At the same time, he's leaving all the COVID mandates in place. He's leaving the vaccine mandates in place as many places as he can that he hasn't been turned over by the Supreme Court. And by the way, in all of these states, they're trying to leave all the COVID mail-in ballot applications and all those requirements in place. But the one thing that they're taking it off for is our border. Imagine that. And I say, you know what? When I look at this stuff, I say, this isn't incompetence, this is an agenda. This is an agenda. And you're looking at it, and ladies and gentlemen, you're living through it right now. They know exactly what they're doing. And, I told the long version of the story last night in Ogallala. I'll give you guys a short story. But I happened to meet with, so France has their election tomorrow. I don't know if you guys follow international politics. Okay, cool. And it looks like it's getting to be pretty close. So Marine Le Pen is sort of a conservative candidate, and then Macron is the more globalist, pro-EU candidate. He's the current president. He got mad at me 5 years ago when I leaked his email. Yeah, the French Le Monde, I guess, is like the big paper in Paris. They were calling me the Julian Assange of France. And I said, look, I didn't hack anybody, I just posted some tweets. And well, that's what President Trump did, whoever got him. And so France has their election coming up tomorrow, and I happen to be meeting with this MP, this Steve Bannon. If you listen to War Room, you know Bannon just knows everybody somehow. And I said, you know, I have a question about you guys, because you have an election coming up, and I hear that you don't do mail-in ballots in France. And this guy, Jerome Hervé, and I said, can you walk me through that? Because I don't, you know, everyone's expecting me to ask about the election, but I said, I want to ask about your election method, right? I want to take it a step aside. And he said, mail-in ballots, they've been banned since the 1970s because there's so much corruption, you can't follow who's voting. I said, well, what do you do then? What do you do? He said, well, it's simple. Every person who shows up has to show their ID so you can verify who they are. And then number two, we have a paper ballot. I said, wow, paper ballot. So it must take you a really long time to, you know, do the whole country of France, right? Millions of people. He said, takes us a couple of hours. Takes us a couple of hours. You know, the same way, if any of you guys have worked election day on a precinct, I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and so, you know, worked plenty of election days. The precinct has the numbers by like, what, 8, 9 o'clock. You know, after a couple hours after polls close, they have a rough tally that they can take off. And so we know that this can be done, right? It's very simple. When I was in the Navy, you know, trick question. If you're in the Navy, don't answer this. There's about 5,000 people on a Navy aircraft carrier, floating cities, right? Steel cities. How long do you think, so a muster is done whenever there's a man overboard drill. So if there's someone calls man overboard, obviously out of 5,000 people, you got to figure out who that dude is, right? Real fast. And so you got to make sure it's not one of yours, or you know, maybe it's just you know, maybe like an accident, an accidental call. And so you conduct what's called a general muster. And so a general muster of an aircraft carrier, 5,000 people. How long do you think it takes?
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
3.5 minutes.
Sure.
5 minutes, sir.
Less than 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, less than 5 minutes. They all 5,000 people will be found accountable immediately, because you have to. And so I've been in operations, in an organization, where we can do this, and you do it from decentralization. So if we can have accountability of 5,000 people in a Navy aircraft carrier over a man overboard drill, then don't tell me that we need all of these new technological systems to get an accurate vote count on election day. We've been doing it for 200 years. People don't change. We can do it now. It's as simple as that. And if you have any problems with that, then you can go talk to my friend Mike Lindell at myvoice.com, where you can save up to 65%. But look, I wanted to keep this kind of informal. You know, I don't know, Malia, do you want to do like a Q&A a little bit, or?
I'm sure people would love that. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny, but
Can you repeat the question?
So the question is, how can we trust 2022? And I said, it's accountability. That's where the citizens come in. We have to be that active citizenry that the founding fathers talked about. We need to be those people that Franklin and Adams and Jefferson were all discussing. And, you know, Republic, if you can keep it, that's up to us now. So we have to keep absolutely keep these people's feet to the fire. And they're trying to do it again in Pennsylvania. So I just had a local lawyer over there, the guy, by the way, who got the bill overturned in the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, but it looks like the Supreme Court is trying to put it back on for mail-in ballots and a sort of universal no-fault mail-in ballots. It's like no-fault divorce, right? You know, no-fault mail-in ballots. That if you just request one, you get one. Or now they're doing, obviously, they send it to everybody. So you got ballots going 6 ways from Sunday. And everybody in this room knows or has experienced at least somebody who got 2 or 3 ballots, or somebody don't live there anymore, or whatever. Now, of course, none of us would ever think to fill that ballot out, but I bet you our neighbor over there, I don't know. So obviously we understand that there's huge issues with it, but you just have to keep them accountable, and you need to elect people who can really focus. But that being said, they're not going to fact checkers don't like it when I say this. I'm going to say it. So in Pennsylvania, when I used to work elections there, we knew. So there's a city in Pennsylvania called Philadelphia. You guys may have heard of it. And so stealing elections isn't. It's not just a random occurrence in Philadelphia. I'd say it's more of a tradition. You know, it's more of a tradition. They learned it from Jersey, and Jersey learned it from New York, and New York invented it. And so in the city of Philadelphia, so if you're running a statewide election, you know that when you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at who moved in and who moved out, and the rolls, of course, are always a joke because there's, the rolls are just so incredibly dirty, that you've got to always just add a couple of points for the Democrats, because even when you run all the population numbers and all the turnout models you do, they always seem to just find about 2 or 3 more % in there that for some reason just don't fit into any of those buckets of new arrivals or college or any of these things. And so what I mean to say is that even with any of these things, or you of course know we talk all about Mark Zuckerberg and his operation Zuckerbucks and everything that he did to turn people out. Even at that point, it still doesn't scale. It doesn't really scale that much. So 2-3%. So if you have a marginal election, that's when it comes into play. But if you have a blowout election, there's nothing they can do about it. Those are the 2 ways you can do it.
James O'Keefe, when he was at the Leadership Institute, I know that they teach them to like drip, drip, drip when you have that information, which he does.
That's what James always does, yeah.
Yeah, he drips, drip, drips, and that keeps it in the public eye. Can we not do the same thing with the laptop? I know Jack Maxey's in Switzerland now, but can't we drip, 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 drip? Because you can't ignore it after a certain time.
Laptop, so we do have BidenLeaks.com. It's been up for about 1.5 years now, and I think what's interesting is that in our head, we feel like we've already reported all this stuff, right? Because we were going through it day after day. I wasn't sleeping, my wife barely saw me, came down to the office, just hunkered down on this thing. And I didn't really want to have that around my kids, as you can imagine. But I think what we really need to start doing now is like a flashback series, a flashback of the main emails. Now look, we understand the broad reaches of it, the broad strokes. This was corruption, this was a corrupt operation, he was going around the world and working with some of our worst adversaries, the CCP, right? And you see what the CCP is doing in Shanghai right now, 26 million people, they're starving the entire city. This is a lockdown like you haven't even seen before. You're not allowed out of your home, you're not allowed to get food delivered, the grocery stores are shut down, and people inside Shanghai are starting to break over this. And so that's 26 million, one of the largest, depending on account, easily top 5 cities in the world. And they're starving 26 million people in that city right now over COVID lockdowns. And I look at this and I say, this is the future that Klaus Schwab wants for all of us, right? Davos. And so they were saying I should go to Davos this year. I don't know, what do you think? Should I go to Davos this year? Darling, would you like to go to Switzerland? We'll see, I don't know. But no, what I want to do is actually go back to some of these things and maybe do like a flashback series or a greatest hits series, and then really plumb the depths of this, because there's so many names in here and there's so much back and forth. Because what they do, it's kind of like it's kind of like Russiagate, right? So it's sort of this like the dossier situation where you've got the dossier, and then you've got a group like Perkins Coie, which is used as a cutout for the Clinton campaign, and the Clinton campaign, then they hire Fusion GPS, then Fusion GPS hires Christopher Steele of Orbis Investigations over in London, then he's got his sources, then they've got their sub-sources, so it's a shell game, right? It's a shell game, although I did that off the top of my head, but it's a shell game all the way down. And that's exactly how Biden was running. So Burisma, they won, and they're owned by Mykola Zlochevsky, and there are reports that even this guy Igor Kolomoisky is one of the oligarchs that's in charge of all of this stuff. And he's funded a lot of politicians in Ukraine and a lot of other different things. And so it goes from Burisma to hiring Hunter Biden, and then Hunter Biden comes to DC and hires a law firm, and then the law firm hires a lobbyist, and then the lobbyist is the one that registers under FARA, so that's the Foreign Agents Registration Act, DOJ, and so Hunter Biden keeps his name off of it, Rosemont Seneca, so it's these shell games all the way through. They did the same thing with Ukraine, they did the same thing in China, they did the same thing in Kazakhstan, Russia, again and again. And we've got a lot more information, I think, that just will seem new to people, because at the time that we started reporting it, we said, look, what are we going to do with this thing? And then, the one producer said, what about Emma over at, the New York Post, Surely they can't censor it if we give it to the New York Post. Yeah, little did we know. Yeah, but no, great question, and it has been something that I've been thinking about. How do we, so I think we need to start the drip again. What do you think? Do we start the drip again? One more question. Am I keeping people, or have you guys already? I'm not saying between you and food. They say, in speaking, they say that's the worst thing to do, to be standing between people and food, because then they just eat you and they don't listen to anything. Oh, yes, yes. I think we're talking. You guys just fight it out.
Okay. So I've heard that they chalked up Youngkin's win in Virginia for two reasons. One, how organized he was, and two, it was either 98 or 99% of all the polls had a poll watcher. They were really organized in that regards too.
Oh, 100%.
What are your thoughts on that versus the Jersey election? I believe they said that they were only able to get somewhere in the 40-some% of precincts with poll watchers versus the 99.
Well, look, again, I came up in politics in the city of Philadelphia. I was a Temple University College Republicans guy. We didn't have fancy organizations like Turning Point University back when I was in school, which is longer than some of you might suspect, by the way. But poll watchers are huge. So even when you remember in Philadelphia 2008, go back a ways, but they had those two new Black Panthers that were standing out front of the polling place, and Sean Hannity and Drudge picked up the video. Yeah, that was a couple of guys that were working in my network, and that was so long ago that was the days of Blackberries and flip videos. Because what I said to everyone who was working the polls was, don't just be there, film whatever happens there. And then if they tell you not, just film it anyway. Just film it, right? Take the crap later, because now you've got footage, and now you can't let them lie about whatever happened. So in 2008, we were handing out flip videos to people using the same type of technique. And nowadays, you don't need to be James O'Keefe. You've all got, look, every single person in this room has got a phone. And that phone is directly connected to the internet. And, you know who all right, I'll do another trick question. Who was the most important journalist in all of 2016? In 2016, who was the most important journalist?
Citizen journalist.
Assange is debatable. I can have that conversation, but I'm making a point. It was Zdenek Garza. Have you guys even heard that name before, Zdenek Garza? Right. But I guarantee you know his work. Zdenek Garza was an off-duty firefighter, immigrant from the Czech Republic, up in Jersey City, who took his day off on 9/11/2016 because he wanted to go to the memorial. And he was at that memorial with Trump, Hillary, and Obama, and they were all there. And he was standing on the sidewalk, and Hillary Clinton, out she comes, and she starts walking, and then she's not walking anymore. And this was the one man who picked up his phone, filmed it, and posted it to his Twitter account. And remember, I want to paint the picture, right? As amazing as that was, that obviously changed the entire tone of that election. Think about it. That was the 9/11 memorial. Every single organization and outlet from the mainstream media was also at that event. So why was it that it was a firefighter taking a day off on 9/11 to go and pay respects? He's the one that gets the video that goes around the entire world, and not a single one of them did. Well, guess what? At any opportunity, any one of you could see something that happens right in front of you, and you could have the opportunity to change history with one video, right? But you have to have that thought of, when something like this is happening, I gotta film it. I gotta film it. So that's what I always say. It's not about James O'Keefe. And Breitbart used to say this too. He said, if you've got one of these phones, Andrew, the late great Andrew, less than 10 years ago, that if you've got one of these things, now congratulations, now you're a journalist. So think about that. Again, you're the citizen. You're the citizen. Yeah. Long-winded answer. You got it.
So I was shocked when the Times came out and verified and saying, yeah, the laptop does actually exist. Are they turning on Biden?
Well, I think you're absolutely seeing that. I think you're absolutely seeing right now the wheels are in motion to either walk him, take him by the hand and say, okay, Uncle Joe, we're just gonna go over here now, and you've done a good job. You did what you were told. You did what we wanted you to do, and now we're just gonna go over here now, right? And you can see it. I mean, the videos that come out on an almost daily basis of him just can't finish a sentence, doesn't know where he is. It's not even funny anymore, this book. But it's sad. Honestly, I feel like it's sad. And we've all had people in our families that have gotten to that point where it's time to take the keys away, and But something to me, I said, look, you know, when I'm that age, I don't want to be up working anymore. I want to be like sitting on a porch somewhere, shooting squirrels, and you know, hanging out with my grandkids. And you know, that's what I want to do, right? And so he's up there as a leader of our country. So I do think you're right. I think that they're starting to get to the point where they're trying to say that Biden, we don't want him to win again, and that's kind of like a flag they're putting up to say, look, we don't want Biden to win again. We got some problems with this VP as well, right? And if it were anybody else, you probably would have already seen the 25th Amendment by now. And I think the one smart thing, it wasn't Joe, it was actually Jill that wanted to bring on Kamala Harris, even though they can't stand each other now, because they knew that nobody would want her to be president, so they actually used her as the safest possible pick. I mean, keep in mind, right? So we're not too far from where Pete Buttigieg is from, right? At least in terms of where I'm from. And so if that guy was vice president, because remember, he was already also in the mix. If that guy was vice president, I guarantee you, they would have 25th Amendmented Joe Biden by now, and you would have President Pete Buttigieg. I kid you not. You absolutely would. And so only because it's Kamala Harris is the single reason he's not there. So they're trying to push him out. They're trying to weaken his brand. I call it the Shade War update when we do it on the podcast. And we talk about all of these sort of inner palace intrigue things going on in the White House. Yeah, Jill can't stand Kamala. Kamala can't stand Jill. You've got Team Biden versus Team Kamala. And then the real president showed up last week. Barack Obama walked in. The guy who really has to hold the strings. But even he seems like he's like, yeah, I don't really want to do any work. I don't want to be that associated with this place. Kind of reminds me of like, you know, like when you have a spin-off of a TV show and the spin-off's not doing so well, the ratings are kind of in the dumper, and they say, we're going to bring back, you know, the guy from Breaking Bad or the guy from Sopranos. I guess you can't bring him. You know, just to try to boost the ratings a little bit. So they brought Obama back, and nobody even cared that Joe Biden was in the room. So any other quick questions for you? Sure.
So this a little bit of a lighthearted one. I was thinking this the other day when you were coming in.
Yes.
Nobody knows Antifa like you do.
Oh yeah.
So
I got to learn a little more today.
Right. So.
By the way, there was an Antifa that showed up today, and let's put it this way: he walked in under his own power, and he walked out in handcuffs. So we're really grateful for Antifa today. That's how we roll.
So you had the media in 2020, MSLSD, China Chi Indian.
Oh yeah.
Washington Compost, all of them were, you know, when they started painting that picture of Antifa is modern day storming the beaches in Normandy. My grandfather was in World War II and he got his leg shot off.
Wow.
He would fish laps on the border. I never compared those little pumps to that. But here's one that you could use it probably to trigger them a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think that these guys are, you know, Nazi, they scream Nazi, that's all they ever do is scream Nazi. What do you think that these actual Antifa, especially like the ones you say, the militant ones that are really into it, are thinking we're watching the media now, actually cheering for Nazis in Ukraine?
Yeah, they have.
And they're not, you know, there's Antifa, we're fighting Nazis, they said, but now you got the media.
Well, I would
actively
say,
cheering
what I would
Nazis
tell them,
on.
I would say is, look, it turns out that there's actually this militant army of Nazis right there, and they're located currently in the city of Mariupol, and you go fight them, guys. Look, so I will buy your ticket. I will buy your ticket, send you on over, go fight those Nazis. We found them all. They've got the insignias, they've got, and I'm not going to go down that whole rabbit hole, but it was basically they took the SS and they turned it on its side, and now they're saying the freedom fighters. I'm like, no, I know what that is. Sure.
How do you think the new Supreme Court nominee, like obviously she's going to vote the same as Breyer would when he retired, but how do you think, like, do you think her presence on the court and opinions might shift one justice to a different side than they would have been on key votes?
Well, I think it's tough. I mean, I don't think it necessarily changes the overall makeup. Obviously, liberals, Democrats on the court. So you've got liberals, Democrats, and John Roberts, right? And you never, John Roberts, man. I keep trying to think of what's the worst thing that George W. Bush did as president, and you go down the list from 9/11 to Iraq to John Roberts, and I just can't pick which one it is, right? Another example, by the way, of those type of Republicans that just come up and they talk a good game and they get into office and look what they do. And look what they leave us with. Well, they make off like bandits, stealing with both hands, right? They're rich, they've got their millions, they'll be fine. It's all the rest of us that have to suffer. So, with Tom Jackson, I look and I listen to her answers. I actually listen to the things that she says, right? And I'm not one of these guys who's, oh, she's, haha, she doesn't know what a woman is, right? I want to know why can't she answer that question, right? I always want to dig a little deeper. I don't know, it's just the way I am. And, or when she's talking about these horrific cases, and there's some kids in the room, but we know about the pictures she was looking at, the clown pictures she was looking at, right? Or these cases that were coming up. She actually believes that it's a Marxist idea. It's a Marxist idea, and I don't know that I've actually heard this from a Supreme Court justice before. That society isn't sort of your law-abiding citizen, you're criminal, right? When we're talking about criminal justice, it's supposed to be law-abiding citizen and criminal, right? Somebody broke the law, so law-abiding citizen is the victim, etc., etc. Right? That's the way it works. That's not the way she looks at it. She looks at it as society's broken into two classes, right? One is the oppressed class, right? We've all heard that. And then one is the oppressor class. And so if someone who's a member of the oppressed class commits a crime, breaks a law, well, it's different. It's different for them. And we should go lighter on them because they're victims of society. They're victims of a systemic, broken society that's been against them from the day they were born and all of these different things. And so that's why they'll be led to say, well, he did it on the internet, and therefore that was easier to procure than back in the days of mail, so that's not so bad. And I look at this and I say, wait a minute. I thought criminal law and criminal justice used to be about finding justice for the victims of the crime. And if you're telling me it's easier to procure more videos and more images now because of the internet, well, the way I look at that, and I think the way most people in this room probably look at that is, well, that means there's more victims, and that means you need to impose harsher penalties so nobody does this stuff anymore. But she doesn't look at it that way. And so the one thing that I do worry about, to answer your question, is that she will, use those arguments and put that out. Probably it's going to be a dissent for a long time, but folks, we just got to look at it the way it is. She's going to be on that bench for 30 more years at this point. She's young. She's very young for Supreme Court justice. So she's going to be up there, but at least she'll be battling out with Gorsuch, with Kavanaugh, with Amy Coney Barrett. So at least we've got three. Look, for Trump to get 3 picks in one term, by the way, nobody talks about that, but that's actually really, really against the odds. That's very rare. Some presidents do 2 terms and don't even get 3. Trump does 3 picks in one term. That is completely unheard of. So I think that it's amazing. It is absolutely God's grace to allow him to have that. But my other thing that I pray to God for is for Clarence Thomas's health. Public enemy number 1 for them. Public enemy number 1. And man, I loved it when they had him up there. Did you hear his briefing when he was talking about the abortion bill? And he's really looking to overturn this thing. And he's asking them, walking through it, and you can see the fire in his eyes. He's been waiting for that moment his entire life to finally turn these things around. And I looked at it, I said, that's a man. That's a man on a mission. And Clarence Thomas, talk about a guy who came from, he didn't even have nothing. He would have loved to have nothing, right? No floor, right? Growing up in the dirt and going all the way to the top of the Supreme Court, and then they won't even acknowledge the absolute lengths that he had to go through growing up in the Deep South and coming up the way he did. And so I just think it's amazing. And of course, they go after his wife, they go after his family, they do everything they can because they know all he's doing is going up there and speaking the truth.
Thanks for coming to Omaha. So I became an American citizen 3 years and a half ago.
Congratulations, you just became an American citizen 3 years ago. Me too.
It's a failed state, full of corruption and the most horrible things. Every time I go, I see it's getting worse and worse. So I have a different perspective because I grew up seeing America as the most amazing country, like the dream, like always like the dream, the United States, the dream you could never achieve, right? Like, oh, I wish I could be there, whatever. So I see it's changing, and it deeply concerns me. And every time I listen to the news and I see what's going on in the border, and my husband Bruce can tell you that it drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy. And what is your advice of what we need to do? Because there is a lot of noise. There is, yes, the Hunter laptop and all these things that we listen to every day, and the spin, the misinformation. But the truth is that if we had to move the event today to be here, it means that even at a local level, there are dark forces moving against us to destroy this beloved nation. So what is your advice on what we need to do today and moving forward to stop them? What do we do?
I think we need to keep doing what we're doing right now. I think this room full of people, they fought hard to try to stop this room from even coming together. And one thing that I want to make sure that everybody, I'm giving you all some homework. I want every single person to meet somebody tonight. I want you to meet someone that you don't know, turn the person next to you, get a phone number, to Instagram, whatever you do, Getter, Truth, etc. Just get those contact information on, because this is influence right here. This is a network. And thank you so much to Malia and everybody else who worked so hard to put this thing together. The other side doesn't want this. They do not want this. And of course, Charlie would probably say, Jack, make sure you do a Turning Point plug. But I really do. Turning Point is an organization that's out there that focuses obviously on students. But there's so many great organizations, and there's so many great events that are being held around the country. It really is this citizen uprising. I actually call it a citizen awakening. Yep. I call it a citizen awakening because so many people, look, I get it, right? Life is tough, right? You got work, and you got bills, and you got kids, right? Right? You only got 24 hours in a day, right? And then you hear this guy's got a crazy laptop, and you're just trying to live your life, right? So it's tough. But in hard times, right? Hard times create strong people. Hard times create strong people. You mentioned that story of coming here. My wife was born in the Soviet Union, and she was just recording a podcast with Alex Clark on Turning Point. It's going to come out on the 4th of July. And I'm stealing your thunder, sweetheart. So she told the story on there. Don't tell anybody I said this. But she told the story of the very first time coming to 2006, being in the United States, and she went to a basketball game and heard the national anthem for the first time. And everybody and she said, I didn't even know what was going on, but suddenly everybody stands up, the hands go over the hearts, the hats come off for the men, and everybody's singing, and everybody's cheering. And she said, I just started tearing up, and I didn't even get it. And then she said, and here we are, and I've seen it change 15 years later, and what she said is, you guys don't know what you have. You don't know, and you know, because you come from outside, so you look at it differently. You see what you had. The rest of the world ain't like this. The rest of the world, it's suffering, it's hard, it's tough. 26 million people starving in Shanghai, right? That's the kind of government the rest of the world has, or crazy levels of corruption, third world issues. They don't have this kind of stuff. They don't have the luxury that we have. They don't have the freedoms that we have. I could not do what I do in most countries of the world. We couldn't have events like this in most countries of the world. The idea that, a regular person could just come up without having the right, connections to be able to actually attain political power and political office or any kind of political influence on society. That's deeply, deeply American. And so when I see the mainstream media, and I see anybody trying to shut down the ability of people to freely associate, we choose to associate, right? Yes. I don't. Was anybody forced to be here tonight? I don't know. Is there any guns under the table? It is Nebraska.
Two different questions.
Well, I'm sure I should have you two guys, but pointing at anybody is what I mean. Right, and no one was forced to be here, and we never would, right? I didn't even consider that, because that's not what we're about. We're about freedom, we're about free choice, and we're about, look, you guys all had something better I'm sure you could be doing at, Saturday night in a beautiful town, a beautiful state. Like, really, guys, you guys really do have a beautiful state, I gotta say. Coming from the East Coast, we don't have and, really, I don't know, Tanya's always like, Midwest, why do you like it so much? I'm like, it's so beautiful. It's just so good, especially when you go out west. It's so beautiful. And you come here for two reasons. Number one is that you love your country, and number two is that you care about what's going on. You care about having a legacy and having a country that continues on. So, if we have time for one or two more questions, and then I'll hang out, obviously. Are we good? Oh, one more.
I have one more. I wanted to ask you about the FBI because they just had that case in the Whitmer case.
You guys heard about that case, right?
Yeah.
Do you understand how big of a deal that is? The FBI, essentially, I know I'm going to get my tweet deleted on this one, but I said a jury just ruled that the FBI essentially entrapped and set up a domestic terrorism case. They created a militia, then targeted the governor, and it was completely fake from the start. They were all informants going in on this thing, flipping people, telling people they wanted to do things that they didn't want to do. They had a guy who came in and said, oh, I'm going to train you on bombs. Yeah, that guy was an FBI guy too. And so the jury actually came in there, and that's actually, it's an old tradition in the United States. There used to be something called jury nullification.
Right. Yeah.
And that's essentially what that was. I know the actual, if there's any lawyers will say, let's know specifically what jury nullification is. I said, yeah, I know. But they nullified the entire case.
Right.
They said, we don't want to live in a country like this. And the media is not going to talk about this. But if you remember, that was the biggest, and I've got friends that are on the other side, I've got friends that aren't necessarily conservatives, etc., people I grew up with, stuff like that, family members. They were all sending me this Michigan thing. That was the story. That was their Hunter Biden's laptop, by the way, in October of 2020, right? I would send them stuff with the laptop, they would send me that story back and forth. And so I think the FBI, if you step back for a second, I say this as a former member of the intelligence community. An FBI agent's testimony on the stand used to be the gold standard. And if you were an FBI, if you were a local law enforcement, and you were, conducting some type of case, if you were prosecuting something with DA, and you could get an FBI agent on the stand, you're done. You're done. You might as well tell the defense attorney to just pack it in, right? You're not going to be collecting too many more hours on this one, right? Because people would just go with the FBI on everything, right? And it's sort of this kind of reputation that grew up in, I guess, the post 9/11 area, where we really, really felt that it was our intelligence community and our national security that was keeping us all safe. And TV shows like CSI kicked off, and all these, it was all the technology, and we loved it. And we said, this is the way to work. But now, in just less than 20 years, not even 20 years since that era, to have the FBI come up and the case completely fall apart, I think that shows you that, and I just talked about, the courtroom in Kenosha, the jury room in Kenosha, where they had video, clearly, of a mob of people attacking 17-year-old kids. I think at the same time here, you've got a jury of people saying, as they say, jury of your peers, 12 people chosen at random, Henry Fonda's not going to be there for 12 Angry Men fans. And they all said no. They said, we can't go along with this. We're not going to go along with this. And they sent them out. And I think that's amazing. I think that's a huge blow in this awakening movement. And that shows me that what we're doing is working.
And what my question is that I've always felt like there were a few within the FBI or within these agencies that would whistleblow.
Well, you're talking to one of them, right? No, it's there are good people, right? And I hate to paint with a broad brush, that every single person that you see with a badge or someone. There are so many people who were like me, that we joined up because we thought, hey, I want to be one of the good guys and I want to catch the bad guys, right? It's as simple as that, right? My kid's 3 years old, he understands the concept, good guys, bad guys, right? But then you start questioning, not that one, he's crying. He's a little jet lagged. We've been on this trip that we've been on the past week, we've actually done one night in every single time zone of the United States. So he's being a trooper right now. So he's being a real trooper. I don't know. I hate being away from him. So I ask him, and thank my wife for for having him out here and being here. But like you said, I do think that there's going to be more and more people. As the stuff gets crazier and crazier, you're going to have more people saying, you know what, this is too far. I can't do this.
I hope so.
Well, she was sitting over there.
What do you think we should do about our men and women being held unconstitutionally, in violation of their Fourth Amendment rights to due process in D.C. for being enticed to come into the Capitol and now being jailed
Well,
and
you saw,
tortured.
I don't know if you saw this, by the way, that we just had a case, the name escapes me off the top of my head, where he was completely acquitted because the juror, well, it was actually the judge, because it was a bench case. The judge said, you know what? If those Capitol Police officers held those doors open, then you were invited in. That's an invitation. That's, I look. So,
To the bathroom.
So
There's a
generally,
bathroom
let's
there.
go to the bathroom, or some people trying to get a drink of water. Look, I've been in DC 10 years. I covered Trump's rally on January 6th. I was with One American News at the time, and One American News, the offices are right across from the Capitol. So I'm standing there on Constitution Avenue, and I say, oh, it looks like there's so many people marching. I want to go up to the roof and get some footage of this. And we go up, and then we realize, so we originally thought that they were going to go, so the March for Life, most marches that go by the Capitol, they continue up Constitution Avenue on the Hill, and then they turn around the Supreme Court. If you guys have ever been to DC, that's how it played out. But on January 6th, something happened, and people were diverted, and they were diverted towards the Capitol. And what's interesting to me is that on a regular day, you can just walk up to the Capitol, right? You can walk across the grounds, you can walk around on the Capitol. It's public ground, obviously it's public. You're allowed to go there. It's one of the biggest tourist attractions in the entire city, right? Probably the entire country. Go take your picture, get that Instagram moment. And so I actually said, while I was standing on the roof watching this, and funny enough, it was earlier in the day, it was with Raheem Kassam, we heard the first flashbangs going off. And I was standing on the roof watching this happen, and I said, you know what's going on here? Is that there's so many people, and they lie all the time about how many people. Ari Melber lied about this on MSNBC the other night. Said there were only 10,000 people in attendance at Trump's rally on January 6th. I said, whoa.
I was there was more than that.
Minimum 50,000. Minimum. Probably more. Right? Probably more. But I'm minimum just as a guy who was there on the ground in the morning, looking out across the entire mall like that, all the way back to the Washington Monument. There's no way that was only 10,000 people. That's a huge area. And
I got a great Instagram moment, like you look super cute.
and you won't fall down. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. 100%. I've been to some concerts like that. Back in Philadelphia. Yeah, System of a Down plays this one. But I said, what's going to happen is that you're going to have maybe less than 1% of something going on all the way at the front. These people all the way here on the back, they have no idea what's going on. They're just following the march. And then we went up there, and I said this on War Room the next day. And I said, here's what I saw. And I'm not adding anything, and if you read Revolver News, you know what we've dug out since then, and all that's to come out since then. Or you should watch Tucker Carlson's documentary on it. It's fantastic. I saw people standing there agitating the crowd. And I did not know who these people were. They were certainly not associated with the rally. They definitely weren't associated with Trump. I remember one guy, clear as day, he was wearing a green, like a poncho, right? And he had a hood up, and he had a baseball hat. You couldn't really see his face. He had a beard. Good, but young guy, maybe, late 20s, early 30s. I remember seeing an older couple just standing there, holding flags, doing their thing, saying, well, yeah, we're here to, put pressure on Congress because we don't agree with these results, and we want there to be a serious debate, and we want this to be turned back to the states. That's what it's all about. That's what we said on War Room every single day. Everybody talks about January 6th, nobody talks about what we said on January 5th, January 4th, January 3rd, etc. And I saw this guy running into the crowd saying, you need to go forward. You came so far. You can't stop now. You need to go. Get in there. That's where your enemy is. They're inside. They're not out here. Go forward, move. And so many people were, and I'm sure most, and the couple was looking kind of confused and said, yeah, I'm here to protest. I'm not really here to do all that. And I think probably 99% of people that were at that rally were saying, I'm not here to do that. And then we find out, obviously, all the videos that come out of the front, the flashbacks that were coming out, some of the tear gas that was being used, people with doors open, not understanding. It was a lot of confusion. Put it this way, it was a lot of confusion. But I do remember that President Trump called for thousands of National Guard to be there that day.
Absolutely right.
And we still have the letter. We still have the letter from Mayor Bowser to Speaker Pelosi and the Capitol Police saying we do not want any federal assistance today. That's what they said. And they countermanded the president's order. The Secretary of Defense did not execute the president's order to bring those National Guardsmen out that day because he was worried about Antifa and just worried about everything, right? He wanted it to be a safe day. And he ordered 20,000, they never put it in place. Never put it in place. Mr. Van Holden.
Last question.
Just
Last
a
question
really
here.
quick follow-up.
Yes.
What needs to happen for the public, to get all the footage that Pelosi has been withholding of all the cameras that were
Well,
on
I'll
the
tell you
ground
what.
that day and in the Capitol?
I don't know how many, political analysts or political scientists are in the room, but you don't need to be a political scientist to know that Nancy Pelosi is not going to be Speaker of the House for very much longer. I want to send her to the unemployment line applying for her COVID stimulus check. Right, but we already know she already got all her money out of the stock market anyway. No, she's not going to be Speaker anymore. And then when we do get a new Speaker, and it probably will be Kevin McCarthy, it probably will. It just looks like it's shaping up that way. I say that by way of intelligence, It does look like it's shaping up that way. But if it is Kevin McCarthy, then I'm going to personally go down there and hold his feet to the fire too, and say, Speaker McCarthy, I want this case. Thank you so much for hanging out, everybody. I feel like we're going to be healthy. God bless all of you. God bless.